Being disabled in medieval times? Oh, buckle up, because society had zero chill about it. Forget ramps, empathy, or even basic human decency. If you had any kind of physical or mental disability, life wasn't just hard. It was basically a survival horror game on nightmare mode, only with fewer options and more plagues. Best case scenario? You became a curiosity, paraded around for nobles to gawk at like a walking medieval sideshow. Worst case? People thought you were cursed, possessed, or just flat out not human. And yes, sometimes that meant exile or execution. Accessibility, never heard of her. Respect, non-existent. And the medical advice, let's just say pray harder and try bleeding more, were considered cutting-edge solutions. So yeah, let's dive into what it really meant to be disabled in the Dark Ages. Because spoiler alert, it was dark in more ways than one. Modern doctors use scans, blood tests, and actual science. Medieval medicine, mostly vibes and holy water. If you had seizures, you weren't neurologically complex. You were demonically possessed. Chronic pain, a test from God. Mental illness, witchcraft? The answer was always spiritual, rarely helpful, and usually terrifying. Medical professionals? That's cute. You'd get treated by barbers, monks, or whoever had the least shaky hands that day. Balancing the humors was their go-to move, which usually meant draining your blood or making you drink something foul until you vomited. There was no understanding of genetics, disability, or even germs. Just a lot of confusion, trial, and error, and a strong chance you wouldn't survive whatever they tried to fix. There were no ramps, elevators, or please be seated accommodations. If you couldn't walk, you crawled. If you were blind, good luck not falling into a well. The built environment wasn't hostile. It just didn't notice you existed. Narrow stairs, uneven roads, and zero modifications were standard. If you needed help getting around, that was a you problem. Your options were have a very strong friend, build a makeshift cart, or stay home and try not to die. And forget sign language or mobility aids. If you couldn't speak or move like everyone else, people assumed something was wrong with your soul, not your body. Basically, the entire world was one giant no-entry sign. The medieval church had one setting for disabled people, pity with a side of guilt. You might be fed or sheltered, but not because you were valued, because helping you made them feel holy. Charity was more about the giver's soul than the receiver's dignity. You could beg outside churches, but you had to look appropriately pitiful. Being cheerful or demanding respect made your faux pas. People saw you as a walking punishment, a reminder that sin exists and God has receipts. The best case scenario? You ended up in a monastery or hospital run by monks. The worst case? You were ignored, mocked, or thrown out as useless. There was no in-between, no care, just survival. In a world where thunder was blamed on angry gods, being disabled was practically a red flag to the universe. People thought you were cursed, bewitched, or being punished for someone's sins, maybe even your mom's. Worse, people sometimes believed disability was contagious. Not scientifically, just spiritually contagious. If you made people uncomfortable or didn't fit in, they might exile you, lock you away, or pretend you didn't exist. Some families literally hid disabled relatives to avoid shame. Others dumped them at monasteries with a "do your best" prayer and rode off. There were no support systems, no community, just isolation, superstition, and the hope that maybe, just maybe, you'd avoid being set on fire. Not everyone shunned disabled people. Some nobles loved them as entertainment. If you had a visible disability, you might be invited to court as a fool or jester, basically a walking meme before memes existed. Your job? Be quirky, amusing, and make rich people feel better about themselves. You weren't respected, you were used. But in some weird twist of fate, it was safer than being feared. Jesters were sometimes the only disabled people with protection, food, and clothes, albeit while wearing humiliating costumes and being laughed at like a talking parrot. It was degrading, sure, but in a world where different usually meant disposable, being a joke sometimes kept you alive. Here's the plot twist. Medieval society created tons of disabled people, then ignored them. Wars, tournaments, brutal punishments, all guaranteed a steady supply of injuries. Missing limbs, brain damage, disfigurements, occupational hazards of being a man. So while disabled children were treated like omens, disabled veterans were sometimes heroes. You could be hailed as a brave knight one day and a burden the next. Society had no clue what to do with you unless you were killing someone or tilling a field. Consistency? Not even a little. If being disabled was bad, being a disabled woman was the medieval version of expert mode with no respawns. Women already had almost no rights, but throw in a disability, and suddenly you were beneath livestock on the social ladder. You couldn't marry, own land, or have a say in anything. If you did get married, it was usually out of pity, desperation, or someone needing a free servant. Midwives sometimes abandoned disabled babies. Deformed girls were hidden, or worse, used as proof their mothers were witches. You weren't seen as a human with feelings. You were a lesson, a burden, or a scandal. Your best hope? Join a convent. Be silent, invisible, and definitely not inconvenient. History loves to romanticize the Middle Ages. Kings, knights, castles. You know what's missing? Disabled people. They were erased from the stories unless they were villains, prophets, or magical plot devices. Physical deformity, obviously a sign of evil. Mental illness, perfect for a creepy oracle. Disabled folks existed in every village, every city, but medieval chroniclers didn't care. And if they did mention them, it was to say, look how holy this person became despite their affliction, like it was a personal growth arc. We don't hear about their real lives, their friendships, their strategies for surviving a world that didn't see them. Because when history's written by the winners, people on the margins are edited out. Could you survive being disabled in medieval times? Technically, yes, but you'd need luck, powerful allies, or a miracle. Most people didn't make it, and if they did, life was hard, isolating, and full of danger, not from your condition, but from everyone else. You'd be seen as cursed, mocked as a freak, or shoved into a convent where silence was the closest thing to peace. And yet, some did survive. They carved out tiny spaces, found moments of kindness, or became legends in spite of it all. Still, let's not romanticize it. Being disabled in medieval times wasn't inspiring, it was brutal. And the worst part, people thought it was normal.